bilingualism, and these were their words.
Most persons I see make an effort to interact with one another, either in French or in English. That one is just to promote multiculturalism and also to promote diversity in language.
It's a very interesting week in my surrounding, given the fact that I'm surrounded by both English-speaking people and French-speaking people. So what I do is that when I get up in the morning, I make sure that those that I know they speak French, I speak English to them. Those that I know they speak English, I speak French to them.
The only way for me to practice bilingualism in my surrounding is to speak English and French at any time, anywhere. In fact, I can decide that I go to school, they decide to speak English, as I can also go then speak French.
For Francophones who had English education, they have a different method to promote bilingualism in their surrounding, like Tina, this engineer, tells us.
I'm from a Francophone family and I did all my schools in the Anglophone section, so bilingualism is my day-to-day routine. In the house, I mostly speak French, but when words are like complicated, there are some words I look for, I don't really find it in French, it just comes in English. So I usually mix up English and French.
Moreover, there are some Cameroonians from English homes who, on their part, found themselves having the Francophone education. It was not easy at the beginning, but they could make it in both languages, as Vanessa, a city dweller, explained.
I'm from an English-speaking family, and I attended the French section. It was kind of tough at the beginning because getting to learn some new words, coping with the classes and everywhere, it was not easy, but with time, I think my French improved. And I'm more accurate in French than in English actually. Some of the toughest difficulties I do find was getting some words. Sometimes in a discussion I'll be in need of a French English word, then directly I will just switch to the other language.
Nevertheless, everyone should understand that bilingualism permits us to connect with others, learn other cultures, promotes family heritage, and succeed in professional life. Thus, the more language we know, the more human we are.
Definitely, the more languages we know, the more human we become. Thank you very much, Jessica Hatangana. Cameroon is a bilingual country constitutional-wise, though the effectiveness of this statement is far-fetched. How possible can we attain a truly bilingual Cameroon and Cameroonians is what Mapalazita tells us.
However, thinks the situation can still be remedied if and only if the educational system is adjusted from the base.
To instill real bilingualism will mean that from the nursery, primary, secondary, at each stage of education.
Enos Akufo, another report there by Mapalazita. And still in line with Cameroon's commemoration of bilingualism, our reporter Gementa discussed with a political analyst on the context of bilingualism within the Anglophone crisis and compiles the following package for the news.
French and English were introduced in Cameroon through colonialism. In 1961, at the reunification, English and French became the two official languages of Cameroon. Thus, one of the main causes of the Anglophone crisis was language problems. Pechangwe George is a political analyst.
One of the main causes of the Anglophone problem was that of the language problem, because most of the texts were all in French and nothing was being said about English. So it was like the English was being relegated to the wall, which was not correct. As per our constitution, it says that English and French shall have equal weights. So one of the main reasons for the Anglophone crisis was that of language.
Moreover, this political analyst does not see the full implementation of bilingualism in Cameroon. Pechangwe George once more.
We cannot be talking of implementation of bilingualism in Cameroon when French are Wales English, which per constitution, English and French need to have equal weights. Bilingualism can be fully implemented in Cameroon if English and French have equal weights as per the constitution of Cameroon. But if English and French are not having equal weights, bilingualism cannot be implemented in Cameroon. It will be good if the two languages have equal weights, that we can talk about implementation of bilingualism in Cameroon, without which it can't work.
And to find out if the full implementation of bilingualism can calm down the Anglophone crisis, this political analyst says,
to calm down the crisis in the Anglophone region, what we need is mutual dialogue. Not what was organized a few years ago in the name of dialogue. What mutual dialogue in a neutral ground with neutral people and non-government officials should be involved. So what we need is mutual dialogue to calm down the crisis in the Anglophone region. Mutual dialogue. That's all what we need.
Many, therefore, expect much from the National Commission for the Promotion of Bilingualism to yield fruits.
Thank you very much, Germenta. Now to this feature story. Journalism is currently undergoing some mutations with a lot of controversies arising as a result of the veracity of information. The concept of militancy journalism is an old but new one which comes to transcend other forms like citizen journalism. Being as watchdogs of the society, journalists ensure credibility so as to sensitize, educate, and entertain the population. Our reporter Susan Nanyonge had a chat with the founder of the Militancy Journalism Group and compiled the following package for the news.
Mr. Franklin Sone Bayen is the founder of this group, which is still growing. He explains what militancy journalism is all about.
Militants of journalism are just like militants of other things, people who are committed in an exceptional way to the fostering of a cause. Here we see journalism as a cause because of the dangers it faces. So militants of journalism different from militant journalists who are militant about other causes, who are journalism really seems threatened in terms of professional philosophies, in terms of the socioeconomic realities, poverty that pervades the sector, something they now call peace journalism, which is people I would call soft heads who think that just watchdog journalism is a threat to peace because people in authority and who fear the truth. And it seems to be gaining some ground, especially because we are at war.
Also, with the threats journalism is facing, he then mentions his aim of fostering militancy journalism.
I find journalism threatened by certain philosophies and certain practices, and I thought that it was time for us to identify a nucleus of young and even older colleagues who are committed to these values so that we can uphold it, even if it's just a mustard seed.
More so, any journalist whose vision ties with his is eligible to integrate the group so as to combat the cankerworms eating the profession. In a nutshell, the Militancy Journalism Group is out to preserve and prolong the original values founding the profession of journalism.
Thank you very much, Susan Nanyonge. Still to come in this newscast, and ex-separatist fighters in the DDR Center in Boyam march in protest, and experts say this can be due to the fact that
if these guys have decided to go out, it's because the government have not fulfilled their promise.
So I guess that's the reason why they decided to protest, because they don't like how they're being treated there.
You are listening to the 2 p.m. News on 88.4 Real FM and watching us live on Facebook on Real FM Cameroon. As you heard then, that soundbite, ex-separatist fighters at the Disarmament, Demobilization and Reintegration Center in Boya Southwest region have staged a protest on February the 1st, 2021 to demand better conditions. The ex-combatants blocked part of the street leading to Bokwango in a bid to make their voices heard. As a result of this protest, our reporter Frinwe Crispin interviewed some Yaoundé city dwellers to get their opinions concerning this protest and compiled the following report.
The National Committee to Disarm, Demobilize and Reintegrate was created by the head of state in 2018 to integrate separatist fighters in the English region and former Boko Haram militants in the far north. The purpose of the DDR Center is to welcome ex-separatist fighters who have surrendered and reinsert them into the civilian life. The creation of this center is a good initiative, according to this Cameroonian.
Creating a demobilization and reintegration center was actually a good idea that the government brought into place because it will help those ex-separatists to be able to occupy themselves in something, to be able to participate in something, and to be able to be part of a group out of being separatists.
However, these ex-fighters, though reinserted in the DDR center, still went on protesting.
Well, if they're protesting, it definitely means that everything is not okay. And the authorities there, since they keep saying everything is okay, making the general public to know that everything is okay. So I guess that's the reason why they decided to protest, because they don't like how they're being treated there. And maybe their expectations are not being met.
If these guys have decided to go out, it's because the government have not fulfilled their promise.
This Yaoundé dynasty goes ahead to say the protest couldn't hold without tangible reasons.
If the government don't look into this, maybe they might decide that it is better to go back to the bushes to become the rebels that they once were.
When somebody is an ex-separatist, you have to be very, very careful with that person, because somebody cannot go and say that he has listed his bad things, drop his weapon down, come now to the DDR center, the government promised to give him something and it delays. The person can still go back to the bush.
Following their protest, these city dwellers say if their wish is not granted, it may lead to another dimension.
If these guys have started going out like this, we should be very careful. The government should be very careful to fulfill their promise and to give them what they promised them. It's good that they should be fast and put these guys on good position.
I would advise that the government should actually look into their plight to make sure that whatsoever they are demanding, it should be given to them, so that they might not have that urge that it is better for them to be in the bushes.
Cameroonians, after judging this situation, have these propositions to make.
If these guys have started going out like this, we should be very careful. The government should be very careful to fulfill their promise and to give them what they promised them. It's good that they should be fast and put these guys on good position.
I would advise that the government should actually look into their plight to make sure that whatsoever they are demanding, it should be given to them, so that they might not have that urge that it is better for them to be in the bushes.
In a nutshell, the DDR Center was created by the government and is entirely under the government, so should be properly handled.
Thank you very much for Nick Crispin. And just to add that these guys were protesting over what they claim are unfulfilled promises made by the government when they dropped their weapons to move to the DDR centers. Our reporter Abel Bela Samari caught up with two political analysts, John Neba and Benedict Ngata. The question Abel put to them is, by creating this center, what was government aiming at? Let's begin with Benedict Ngata before John Neba.
I think the main objective of the creation of the Disarmament, Demobilization and Reintegration Committee was to help disarm, demobilize, reintegrate and reinsert a secessionist fighter in the Nozo region, and by extension the former Boko Haram militants in the far north regions of Cameroon.
The role of the DDR centers was, first of all, to transform the fighters into normal citizens, give them a normal life and a normal thinking style again, stabilize them psychologically and mentally, and then those who did not know how to do any job, train them and then employ them, protect their family members. And the most important role of the GDR centers was to treat these ex-fighters in an exemplary way that can encourage those who are still in the bushes to drop their weapons and come to those centers.
Now the next question for both gentlemen was, what impact will this strike have, John Neba?
Well, the impact of that strike of yesterday is really terrible because, firstly, it tells those in the bushes who were even nursing that idea at the back of their minds to quit the bushes that the government has set a trap to catch them and either eliminate them through starvation or torment them or give them punishment without necessarily making them to know that it was a trap. We can finally conclude that those DDR centers were minor or small prison yards that were created to actually punish those who are willing to embrace peace.
I believe that any objective critic will share with me that the creation of this committee was a giant step towards helping Cameroonians who had embraced the path of secession to drop their arms and reintegrate themselves into normal civilian life. And I think that recently the number of killings, the number of kidnappings, the level of vandalism has subsided greatly.
The last question Abel Belasamari asked was, can we say the government has failed? First, Benedict Ngata.
Now, the second part of the worry now is, has the government failed? Yes, to an extent, the government has failed. But then, to say completely that the government has failed, I think it will be an overstatement. First, by creating the Disarmament, Demobilization and Reintegration Committee was out of the will and the love of the government to see that these former secessionist fighters, they reintegrate themselves into civilian life and live a normal life.
Saying that government has failed will actually sound as if government actually wanted to do something serious. Judging from what happened during the Grand National Dialogue, we will see that the government has not been serious. Government has been taking cosmetic measures with the aim of telling the international community that they are actually working for peace, whereas government itself does not believe in the measures that he is taking.
John Neba and Benedict Ngata speaking there to Abel Belasamaro, who is here with me in the studio. Good afternoon to you, Abel.
Good afternoon to you, Promise Akante.
Abel, following the strike action of trainees at the DDR Center in Boya, which is not the first time that they are complaining of unfulfilled promises by the government, I ask this question to you, Abel. Where lies the problem?
Promise Akante, truth be told to whom it may concern. The problem within the DDR Center, especially that of Boya, is corruption and manipulation. Corruption in the sense that it is not the first time, like you rightly said, the trainees at the Boya Center are coming out strongly to denounce their poor living condition and endless promises by the authority. Meanwhile, the National Coordinator for the Disarmament, Demobilization and Reintegration Commission, Fayongo Francis, in a media outing in 2020 said money was disbursed regularly for the upkeep of these trainees. But the government, a few days later, went ahead to change the heads of the director of the Boya Center without explaining why he was sacked to the public, thereby clearing doubt that they are officials of the DDR Center whose principal interest is to make quick money at the detriment of the trainees. It is even alleged that if you go to Boya, some of these ex-Amber boys have been reduced to street beggars, others are experts in drug trafficking. But when you ask officials of the DDR Center in Boya, they will tell you hidden hands are suspected to be behind the ex-fighters, pushing them to go down the streets and demonstrate to the world that they are poorly treated. If at all they are hidden hands, I see manipulation. Manipulation by some out there who are poking the flame of instigation in an attempt to frustrate the government effort to woo fighters to drop their arms. Coming out of the bush is also another point. Talking about wooing fighters, I see government machinery manipulating these ex-fighters without telling them clearly what they stand to benefit once in the center. They keep promising them with lucrative job as state corporation. Meanwhile, if these ex-fighters are being told the truth at the beginning of their stay, we will not have what we are having today, a strike action at our different centers. However, some are even doubting the authenticity and the efficiency of these ex-fighters, if truly they are ex-fighters, as some sources claim that they are purported youth selected just to manipulate popular opinion.
Thank you very much, Staff Manabel Belasamaria. In a human interest story, an explosive has left one dead and another injured in the Bipanda neighborhood in Douala. Reports say the duo were believed to have been fabricating an explosive when it went off in their home, hence killing one and injuring the other. You are listening to the 2 p.m. 88.4 Real FM. Outside of the country, Nigeria has extended the deadline for the mandatory registration of all mobile phone SIM cards by 8 weeks. The Communications Minister Issa Pantami said in a statement that the extension is meant to give Nigerians and legal residents more time to integrate their national identity cards with the SIM card. Users risk having their mobile phone numbers deactivated if fail to register them by April the 6th. President Muhammadu Buhari is quoted in the minister's statement as urging Nigerians and persons of other nationalities to take advantage of the extension period to fully participate in the process. Calls are growing for the release of Myanmar's Aung San Suu Kyi a day after military coup, which has seen hundreds of MPs held against their will. Ms. Suu Kyi, who was widely considered the country's leader, has not been seen since she was detained by the military. It took power after declaring a state of emergency, accusing Ms. Suu Kyi's party of fraud over its election win. While no protests have been reported, there have been acts of defiance, including a strike by medical staff. One day after the coup, the streets remained quiet this morning, with troops patrolling all major cities and a night-time curfew in force. Phone and internet connections that were disrupted yesterday have been returned. New variants of coronavirus are emerging with more infections than the original one that started the pandemic. The UK is stepping up testing to find and stop cases from spreading in the community, and scientists are urgently studying the mutated versions to understand what threat they pose. There are many thousands of different versions or variants. It is not unexpected that new variants have developed. All viruses mutate as they make new copies of themselves to spread and thrive. The UK, South Africa, and Brazil variants could be much more contagious or easy to catch than earlier variants. The UK government has announced a ban to flights from South Africa and South America and Portugal to prevent spread. Studies are underway to check this, and some early results suggest the Pfizer vaccine protects against the new variant. Meantime, Tanzania's health minister Dorothy Gwajima has said the East African nation has no plans to import foreign-made COVID-19 vaccines at a time when there are fears that infections are rising. Her comments come a week after President John Magufuli warned health officials against acquiring coronavirus vaccines, saying without giving evidence that they could harm the population. Last month, the WHO urged Tanzania to consider inoculating its population. Dr. Gwajima also warned media outlets not to report unofficial information on coronavirus or any disease. Let's come back to Talk Shan 2020. The 2021 African Nations Football Championship Chan Cameroon, our special page in the news. And we begin with the Intermediate Lions of Cameroon, who will face Intermediate Atlas Lions of Morocco this Wednesday at the Limbe Omispor Stadium. The head coach of the Auxiliary Lions, Coach Martin Tungopile, stated that his team is not ready to let go such an opportunity at any cost and are ready to face Morocco. Beng Emmanuel.
There is no room for mistakes, and Coach Martin Tungopile is obviously aware of the stakes in Wednesday's clash against the defending champions, Morocco. During the pre-match press conference at the Limbe Omnisport Stadium this morning, the tactical genius disclosed his side is ready to brave the odds to emerge victorious and seal a spot for the finals. He further disclosed that the team is self-assured to produce a stunning display regardless of the status of the adversary, Morocco. Besides being one of the most dreaded sides so far in the CHAN, the Atlas Lions can bank on a cast of talent whose impressive form has been indispensable to keep the North African nation out of sight. That notwithstanding, the head coach of the Intermediate Lions believes his team has the brilliance largely pivotal to keep themselves at bay from possible doom. The Intermediate Lions of Cameroon will face Morocco for the first time at the CHAN. The game, which is set to begin at 8 p.m. at the Limbe Omnisport Stadium, will be a cracker.
The 2021 African Nations Football Championship CHAN Cameroon. That was our special page in the news.
In other sports news, the under-17 men's national football team of Cameroon thrashed Tat Sport 3-0 during a warm-up game at the CAF Excellence Center in Bankomo, Yaoundé yesterday. The team is yet to lose in any of their last 5 preparatory games, having scored 17 goals without conceding. At the end of the encounter, the head coach of the team, Anicet Mbarga-Foué, said he was delighted with his side's performance.
According to our last game, we play a 0-0 draw against Kaji Sport Academy, and we try to explain to our player what was wrong and what was well done. And today we have another team, namely Tat Sport Academy, and we wanted to make it better. And after the game, when you have scored 3 goals, you can be satisfied.
That was Anise Mbarga-Foué in that sound there. And of course, we welcome Flora Ngoyam. What's the summary of this newscast in the French language? Bon après-midi, Flora.
Bon après-midi, Promissa Kanté. Célébration de la Semaine nationale du bilinguisme au Cameroun, le ministre des Enseignements secondaires met l'accent sur la pratique et le maniement du français et de l'anglais, par ailleurs principale langue officielle du pays. En société, un mort et un blessé grave, tel est le bilan d'une explosion de bombes artisanales survenue hier au quartier Bepanda dans la ville de Douala. Retour au calme dans le centre de désarmement, de démobilisation et de réintégration de Boya, où 137 ex-sécessionnistes se sont soulevés pour dénoncer leur abandon par les pouvoirs publics. À l'étranger, Birmanie, le Conseil de sécurité des Nations Unies fait le point depuis ce matin. Pourtant, aucune réponse aux condamnations internationales n'a été donnée par l'armée birmane. Et puis en sport football, les Lions indomptables des U17 bouclent ce jour leur deuxième regroupement au centre technique de la Confédération africaine de football.
And that is the package we have for you this afternoon. The news was produced by Susan Nanyonge. Carol Prudence Tienche was our copyright clerk. Jean Passia Tala for editorial coaching. Bertrand Bona for coordination, and Reverend Pastor Emmanuel Noel Bisai for general supervision. We had the technical assistance of Rima Kume as our sound engineer, Alain Kwekam as our video editor. And more news comes up at 6 p.m. bilingual version co-presented by Frinwe, Crispin and Eve, Modeste Nge. But up next after me is Henri Felak Chavebu with Leduc Roger Kiyek de Kiki. My name is Promise Akante, wishing you a royal time on Royal FM.